To everyone here in the community room at the Tempe History Museum, and to those who are watching on Facebook. We're happy to have all of you here, and I don't know if it's because of the speaker or it's just people really want to get out, but this is the biggest turnout we've had since the pandemic. Dave, don't let that make you nervous. It's nice to see a full room and adding chairs. This is making us feel a lot better because it's been hard to recover. So a couple of questions. We'll talk about Friendship Village in a second, but how many are here from Friendship Village? Oh, wow, bless you all. And how many are members of the Tempe History Society? Or let's put it this way, how many are not? All right, get out. You can go to the front desk and become a member and then come back in. Really, we're doing all of this work for you and you're not even a member. And it's so cheap to become a member of the society. And it's the membership that helps us grow. And when we go out for grants and things of that sort, I mentioned that before, potential grantees or grantors want to know how many members you have, what kind of support you have in the community. So being a member is really important to us. As you probably know, it's been over 5 years, but Friendship Village has been our sponsor, and that's really helped us bring up our programming. We've now extended the programming by 2 additional months, one in September and the other in May. And that gives us a lot more opportunities to present things to you for the lunch talks. Before we begin, let me introduce you to Mark Young, who is the marketing director over at Friendship Village, and he has a welcoming note for all.
Hello. My name is Mark Young, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Sales here at Friendship Village of Tempe. For those of you who may not know, Friendship Village has been in expansion mode since July 2019. In July of 2021, we opened our Mesquite building, which has 40 new apartment homes. Phase 2 of our expansion efforts, Acacia, will offer 64 apartment homes, underground parking, and an impressive rooftop restaurant. We are scheduled to have Acacia open in the summer of 2024. If you'd like a tour of the campus, please contact the marketing department or go to our website, friendshipvillageaz.com, to see a virtual tour. Friendship Village is very proud to be a featured sponsor of the Tempe History Society and appreciate the different perspectives offered by the many speakers. Thank you all for your time and enjoy your talk.
Thank you, Mark, and thanks to Friendship Village for their continuing support of the lunch talks. All right, let's get right down to the matter at hand, and this is probably one of the most, I think everybody wants to know a little bit about the history of railroads in Tempe, and it's very convoluted. We'll see if Dave is able to translate that all for us, because then you can really be good at trivia contests when you can figure out the railroads and the alignments and the number of railroad depots and all of that. I don't know why David is doing this, because there's a lot to dislike about him. He's had a pretty long history. And one of the things I hope he is going to explain, in part of his career, he was an airline pilot for Western Airlines, correct? And that seems to me to be a conflict of interest. Either you're a train guy or you're an airplane guy. You can't be both of those things. And that's one of the reasons that I have trouble introducing him, because I always wanted to be an airline pilot. I got a pilot's license, but I never got that far. And so now he is not flying, but he is a huge model train, I don't want to even say aficionado. A 4,000 square foot addition to your house? 4,400 square foot addition to his house just to accommodate trains. Yeah, I mean, you can see why I have trouble finding anything nice to say about him, because it's all the things I wanted to do personally. And I don't mean to personalize this, because I'm just here to introduce the speaker and not feel personally affected by somebody who can, you know, have 44. My house is not 4,400 square feet, for God's sake, you know. And I got one picture of a train. And that's the extent of it. So anyway, without further ado, please let me introduce you to David Dorion, and he's going to explain everything to you.
Thank you, Vic.
All right, let's test
Try
it.
this one here. Try this one instead. Just put the front
Test,
battery.
test.
Okay.
Turn that one back on.
Yep.
Thank you.
There's a lot of technical operation up here. You guys know the old story. The neutron and the proton were talking to each other, and the proton said, you know, electrons are evil. And the proton said, are you positive? I know, that's dangerous to try and make a joke in a college town. Anyway, by way of my curriculum vitae, yes, I have worn several hats during my life. For example, I wore these for 12 years. 12 years in the Air Force. And then for 28, it was this. And, you know, it's kind of interesting when you've got 300 people behind you counting on you for, you know, for safety, and you're in the middle of the North Atlantic in the middle of the night, and everything's quiet, and you're the only one in the cockpit, and you smile to yourself and say, gee. And Vic is right, I never wore this at work, but my grandfather did, and I learned about railroads at his knee, so we'll pass some of that on. Now, we will start with this presentation, and we'll see how far we can get. A new computer. Ah, yes. Sometimes you get surprised. Sometimes you are expecting one thing and you get something else. Now, this is a picture of Tempe taken back some time ago. And just like it says, this is the closest place within 20 miles for a good crossing of the Salt River. There is a formation that is Tempe Butte and the butte on the other side, hole in the wall or hole in the rock, that passes underneath the Salt River. And as a result, it's good ground for a foundation. You go further east or further west, the ground's soft, and heavy water flow in the Salt River would wash it out. So Tempe is, by and large, founded because of transportation. Transportation can be automotive or air or train. So Tempe has been connected to those things all along. Here's a little more modern picture and taken from a little higher angle. And by golly, look at there, the little arrow works. See the arrow in the middle of the river? Okay, I'm going to move it now over to the left. And you see this curved line right here? That curved line still exists as a excavation on the north bank of the Salt River. That was where the original line by the Santa Fe came along the north bank of the Salt, curved around, and went across on a flimsy little bridge, and went across right here next to Hayden's flour mill. And that line washed out by a big flood. There was another bridge, let me go back again, another bridge on this side, which was put up in 1912, this particular one. There's been an earlier bridge that was replaced, but this is the 1912 bridge. which today is no longer in possession of that last span. There was a derailment a couple of years ago that had an intense fire, and the heat melted the structural integrity of that bridge span, so it has been replaced. But all the others are from 1912. And that's what they look like from inside. They don't look like this today exactly because the current owner, who I won't mention, the current owner of that railroad has put in some guardrails on the inside. This is the Santa Fe Bridge. This is the one that went from that curved line on the north bank of the river and went across where Hayden's flour mill is. And you can see it's kind of flimsy looking, and it, as a result of the water flow, it washed it out. And I have here something that most people don't even imagine. I have a piece of that bridge. And people have asked me, how did I get it? Well, I took my trusty hacksaw down into the river bottom and whacked it out. So, and I had help. My daughter, who is now 40-something, was helping me inspect the wreckage to see what I could use to cut. Now, that piece that she's looking at is way too heavy for my hacksaw, so we went somewhere else. This is an early map, and it's useful for a couple of reasons. Now, be aware that it is what's the right word? Creativity intense. So some of the shapes and things aren't exactly right, but it shows the Southern Pacific line. Let's see, where did the arrow go? Here's the arrow down near the bottom where it says Sweetwater. That's the Southern Pacific line across Arizona back in the early 1900s, or actually the late 1800s. And this is Maricopa right here at the bottom center. And it crosses the Gila River and comes up, crosses at Tempe. Once again, the best place for a bridge across the Salt River, and then curves over and gets to Phoenix. And that was the extent of the line. It was an angled line like that. And that was the first railroad and the first real communication with the outside world that allowed for rapid transportation of mail and people. The stagecoach lines had been coming to Tempe for a while, but this was the first daily and easily accessed transportation. You'll notice that Mesa is a little bitty thing over here on the side, but visions of grandeur would change that. Now, this is a little bit later on, and we have some other names involved. This is the same line at the bottom, the Southern Pacific across Maricopa, and the line still went from Maricopa through all these little places. And I want to point out a couple of spots up here that are marked here on the map. There's Peterson right there, just below Tempe. And Peterson is named after Peterson, Nils Peterson, from whence the Peterson House takes its name. However, Nils and the Peterson family spelled their name Petersen, and the Southern Pacific Railroad could not see fit to using the Swedish spelling, so they spelled it S-O-N. And down below is the town of Helena, H-E-L-N-A. Now, there's a Helena, Montana. You probably didn't know there was a Helena, Arizona. And there is a joke about Helena that I won't tell you. It involves my wife's handbasket shop. Now, over here, you'll notice that there are two lines that go from Tempe out towards Mesa. And there are two lines that go from Phoenix over to Tempe. So there's a double set of black lines. And the reason is because the Santa Fe had come down in that diagonal line that you see in the upper section of the map. It came down very close to what is now Grand Avenue. And that line and the line of the SP from the south, I know there's other names on here. Dan Thompson's very familiar with all those names, but I'm just going to use Southern Pacific because it's easier. They both wanted to reach out to the eastern part of Arizona to get to the copper fields, but there wasn't enough business for both of them. So the Santa Fe and the Southern Pacific came to an agreement, and the Southern Pacific took the lines east of Phoenix, and the Santa Fe took the lines south of Phoenix down around the river. And all of those lines are all gone now. The only thing that's left is just this one line that comes down from Phoenix, crosses the bridge in Tempe. Now, We look at a little more modern map. This one took place after the 70s, and you can see that the line going down past Peterson and Helena still exists right over here, and then the line through Mesa now does not go in a straight line to Maricopa. When they built it, they cut off the Maricopa line at West Chandler, and the line swings over and goes down through Poston. This was the racetrack of the Southern Pacific. The trains would go 95 miles an hour along this stretch. And that was pretty quick for travel in Arizona, but it was mostly desert at that time, so they would move right along. Later, they decided that they would cut the line even shorter and have less track maintenance by cutting it off at Dock, which is right about here, and taking this corner right here and connecting it up to the track going past Queen Creek. And that is now the line connecting down to Tucson. So the trains that come into Tempe and then on into Phoenix now come past that way. So we don't see much of the density that we used to, but they still come from Mesa and come across. And this is a bigger version of that map, so you can see that there were two main lines. The lower main line, the one that went through Maricopa, and the other main line that went up north and up through the Phoenix metropolitan area and then swung back over this way. And that line is no longer continuous because somewhere along in here and somewhere along in here they cut the line off. So that made the line through Tempe and Phoenix now is a branch. It's a dead end, but it's still very busy. You'll remember that the unnamed railroad that replaced the bridge in Tempe did so quickly because it was still a vital link. This is a map that was done in 1915, and if you look, here's Tempe over on the left side, and that's its full size. It didn't extend very far at that time, but that's it. The track in Tempe went two directions. It went down through here on this side, down to Maricopa, and it went through a little curve right next to the Tempe Depot, right where the arrow is swinging over on the left side, through downtown Tempe, and then down what is today Terrace Road, and then straight east until it got to Phoenix or to Mesa. The other line came roughly over the side of Tempe Butte, where Hayden's Mill is, and then ran parallel until it got to about right here, that's not rural road, that's rural school road, like Alma School Road is called today. Well, we dropped the school. And the line split, and it went over past the creamery, which is right here, and then went up to one of these survey lines and went straight east over into Mesa. Now, in Mesa, I know this is supposed to be all Tempe, but I'll throw a little bit of Mesa in here. In Mesa, there's a street called Pomeroy, which runs very, very close to Mesa Drive. In fact, if you have a house in that little area between the two, you can face one way or the other, but you can't have two houses back to back. It's such a narrow strip of land. And the reason why is because Pomeroy was where the railroad tracks ran down the street in Mesa. So there were two lines from Tempe over to Mesa in competition, and there wasn't enough business for both of them, so the north line was cut back, and the south line kept going. However, that curve through downtown Tempe right next to the depot was too sharp for the big trains and the big engines, so they said, let's just do something. So this blue line down here at the bottom was added, and when it was put in, then that old line through downtown Tempe became another branch. This is a map from about that same time period. It shows a close-up, and it shows something that's very interesting. The lines through what's now not North Tempe, but Central Tempe, right here, is where the light rail runs today. And you'll notice that there is a little spur here that curves up towards Tempe Butte. Tempe Butte's on this side, and there's another little butte on this side next to where the alignment is of Rural School Road. And the reason for that little spur was because there was a gravel pit right there. That gravel pit was enlarged and made quite big, and Arizona State University says, oh, we can make a use of that. We can put bleachers on either side and take advantage of that big flat area where they've dug it out, and that is now ASU Stadium, built by the railroad. Up on this area here, you can see that curve where the line comes off from the north-south main line and then heads over this direction. That curve is pretty sharp, but you know what? They tore it out in the late 70s, and they tore all this track out eventually. And the line through Terrace was gone. The line towards Mesa was gone. And then they decided they want to put in light rail, and they thought, where can we put it? And they realized that they had a really good road bed running down Terrace. So they took the tracks out, and then they put them back in. And now this is Tempe a little bit later, and it shows about the highest extent of the tracks in Tempe and its industries. And there's a big cotton gin right here on this side of town. That's gone. In fact, all of the industries that the railroad served on the north-south segment are all gone. There was a big hardware store. All of a sudden the name escapes me. I know you guys never have memory problems, but I do. There was a big 6-track yard next to the depot, and that's all gone as well. There is a little bit of a runaround track there, and that's all. And the other thing that's happened, when I moved to Tempe, I was very happy to be able to hear the trains, and that sense of wanderlust and hearing the trains go by was part of the package deal. Well, some of the newcomers to Tempe decided that they didn't like that sound, so they made Tempe a quiet zone. So the whistles don't blow anymore, except on that little piece that comes off at 13th Street going south. Those you can still hear. The Creamery Branch East End, that's that branch that used to head off towards Mesa. You can see it here coming along what was called Transmission Road. Now, we used to joke when I was a kid that the Transmission Road name got its name because it was so rough that if you drove down it, the transmission would drop out of your car. But it was actually named after the Salt River Project power lines that were transmitting power along that road. And the railroad curved right here and then curved back to go this direction out towards that blue line over on the right side. This picture was taken when the power plant at McClintock and University was being put in, which, by the way, that power plant's gone now. If you drive up McClintock, you won't see that big power plant. They've replaced it with 5 little ones over on this side. But the drive on University has a little feature right about here. As you drive between McClintock and Dorsey, there's a hump in the road right here. And the reason for that hump is because that's where the tracks used to go across. And rather than excavate it, they just paved over the tracks. And this is part of the land grant that the Southern Pacific had in their building of the railroad. The tracks to the west, I should state that, from the tracks off to the west to about Priest, between Broadway and Southern, was granted to the Southern Pacific for development. And they sold it to industries. And there used to be tracks that came in here and served these various industries. This was Safeway down here. There was a big furniture complex down here. All gone. No more railroads in there. This is the Kyrene branch running down further. This is one of the Elliott Warner roads, I can't remember which, or Baseline. Probably Baseline because this is all Kyrene, or Kiwanis Park now. But up along this line, there were several industries, and some of them still survive, and that's the only railroading that's left in Tempe where they deliver and serve cars. This is the list, the timetable, the employees' timetable, not the timetable distributed to the public. And it showed all of these place names. And the reason why those place names were important was because that's how they moved the traffic. Now, one of the things that I did was in the flying game was work on the radio with the air traffic controllers because they would tell us what there was and what we had to steer away from and so forth. But back in the day, this is what the railroaders used. Telegraph. This is my grandfather's practice set. And if you look, it has a Prince Albert can stuck in it. And the reason why is because that's called a sounder. And in the towers and other places where the railroaders use these things, it was connected to a big wood box that took the sound and amplified it into the room. And they would send messages from the dispatcher to the various offices. And the offices would have a message that they would write down on a little piece of paper. And this little piece of paper would have instructions on it. And this fellow here is looking at it, and that's pretty flimsy paper. And that's what they called it, a flimsy. You can pass that around. And in order to get it to the crews, they had one of these. It's called a train order fork. And Diane, would you come up here, please? So you're the agent, so stand over there. No, don't grab it up high. Put one hand right at that mark, down below. That's it right there. And then you put it down so the edge of the fork, not flat that way, this way, yep. The edge of the fork would just touch the rails, okay? That's the perfect distance to stand. And then you would hold it up about that high with your arms extended. No, hang on to the same place and extend your arms. No, not sideways. Hold this thing out further. There you go. And the train would come by at about 50 miles an hour, and he'd put his arm through there, and he'd grab this string, and he would take the message off of it. Weren't she's in those days. And the message would have one of those flimsy pieces of paper.
How did that not whip out of his hands, this whole thing?
They held onto it strongly. And the papers would look something like that. And here's a picture of an engineer grabbing one of those orders. And you can see how high he had to hold it up. And this guy is a real brave guy. He can do it with one hand. All right. Oh, and that's probably not going by very fast either. There's Hayden's Mill. And Hayden's Mill had all kinds of traffic. And if we look along here, there's actually two levels. This level down here, I don't know if you can see the little arrow bouncing around, but that level down there was where they had railroad cars come in that picked up flour to take out. And this track up here was where the hoppers came in with the grain that had to be milled. And they stored it in this big concrete structure. The actual mill is this squarish building down here. This is where they did the flour milling. And this is a little warehouse out front. This thing over on the right side, the big tall building that everybody knows, was just for storage. Now, if we go up on top of Tempe Butte and look off to the southeast, this is that railroad line heading down Terrace. And as you can see, it's almost all farms. There's not too much industry being built. There's even a little bit of farm right here next to it. And that's the line we were just looking at, and you can see it comes down. And this area right here used to be the McElhaney Cattle Company, and it went all the way from Rural School Road over to McClintock. And McClintock back in those days, by the way, was an overpass. Now it's an underpass, and it's about 6 lanes wide, but back in the day it was a 2-lane overpass. And that whole area was a feedlot. They didn't raise cattle there. Cattle would come in from all over Arizona, and they would be brought, and they would be tired, and they would need feed, and they'd need rest. So they'd rest them up at the McElhaney cattle lot. And then when it was time, they were sent over to the Tovria plant, and at the Tovria plant, they were turned into steaks and belts and shoes and things like that. This is the Cudahy plant, which was in cahoots with the Tovria family. And we still talk about Tovria today. We don't call it Cudahy, we call it Tovria. And this is an overhead view of that facility. And you'll see these pins. There were hundreds of cattle loading pins. And unfortunately, you might look at this almost like a cow hotel. You know, they check in, but they don't check out. But there was one track over here where supplies were brought in. So that's the reason why it's listed on this little slide. And by the way, the wedding cake house that you see as you drive down Van Buren is this building right here in the middle of this lot. And what most people don't realize is there are outbuildings around the periphery of this lot, and there are tunnels that connect from the Tovria house to each one of these outbuildings. I've never been able to find out what those tunnels were for, but people tell me it had something to do with prohibition. Now, this is what is now the area next to Kiwanis Park. Kiwanis Park is over in this dark area here and over to this side. This is a metal fabrication area that took in scrap metal and turned it into various things. It turned it into culvert, rebar, and those big steel balls that are used in eastern Arizona to crush the copper ore. And the most common name that it's recognized by is Marathon Steel. Another name is Capital. There was another name besides, but it escapes me at the moment. Jim Middleton knows what it is. That industry, by the way, still exists, but it doesn't get materials by the railroad anymore. More big trucks coming through Tempe. Okay, this is from the east side of this track. This is looking directly west, and the Tempe Depot has had several versions. The one that exists now was not the earliest one, not the first one. And you can see this curved track where the light rail goes, already in place. And West Tempe was mostly farms back in those days. So we've had urbanization take place since this picture was taken. Here's another picture, and it shows where the river runs. There's Tempe Beach Park over here. There's the mill over on this side, the depot over here. If you look carefully, right next to the depot, there's a string of boxcars. That was called a house track. There was no dedicated freight house in Tempe, but if you ordered a washing machine or something big that couldn't come in the mail, frequently it would be sent by a boxcar, and it would be parked along that track, and you would drive up to the boxcar with your truck, and people would help you unload your new washing machine or your refrigerator or whatever, and put it into your truck, and off you would drive into Tempe. And I have an experience I want to talk about in this little area right here. There was a mail crane right about there. One of the first times I came to the depot when I was, 12, 13, something like that. And I was on my bicycle, and I just happened to watch a guy from the post office who had one of those brown post office trucks. Remember when post office trucks were brown? And he took a mail bag out of his truck, and he hung it up on a crane right next to the tracks. And I said, "What's that for?" He says, "Oh, the train's going to grab this mail bag." And I said, "Oh, that's going to be neat." So I took the kickstand on my bike and kicked it down and stood there. And he says, "No, you don't want to be here." "Why is that?" I said. "Because you'll see, I'm going to move back about 50 feet, and you should do the same." So the truck moved back about 50 feet, and so did I. And when that train came by, it had a hook that came out and grabbed the mail bag, and very, very surreptitiously, so you wouldn't notice it, the guy had his foot on a mail bag on the floor. And as he grabbed the one out here, he kicked that one out. The train's going 50 or 60 miles an hour, so that mail bag, however much it weighed, came out like a projectile. And it was tough enough that it slid along the ground and stopped without damaging the mail inside. But if you'd been standing there, it might have killed you. It was coming along pretty quick. That was a real education for me. Now, at Hayden's Mill, there are two different ways they use to move cars. Now, you can see a guy moving a car here with a car mover. And Diane, you can come up here again. And Jim Middleton, would you join us? She's going to show you how heavy this thing is. Yeah, lift it and put it on the floor. Come on, Jim. Right out here in the front, dear. He's going to be the car. Jim, put your foot down there. And try to hold it down, Jim. To hold it as well as you can. Now, Diane, you just lower the thing. And you can see Jim can't stop it. It just lifts him right up. Okay, that's a car mover. Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome. Notice I'm lifting this back up and not one of these guys.
Thank you, dear. You guys can come up and see this stuff at your pleasure a little later on. This is a close-up, by the way, of those cars. And there's the mail crane right there. And there is a tail track right here that doesn't show up real well. And the reason why that tail track is there, because Tempe used to have industries along in here, and they had cars that were parked. Now, the cars were supposed to have their handbrakes set so that they didn't roll away. And you'd say, "Roll away, it's flat through there." Not quite. Tempe's a little higher than the river, so this ground slopes down towards the river bottom. And if one of those cars should get away and start rolling, it would go back out onto the main line, and it would cause an accident. So the switches were left lined for this little tail track here, and if a car rolled away, it would go down onto the tail track. Now, the railroads never spent money they didn't need to, so in my mind, I just imagine sometime in the distant past, a car rolled out like that, and he says, oh, we've got to put a tail track in there. And this place here is a real motivator. Tempico Groves is one of those buildings that was right along in here. And I spent a summer, now not even a whole summer, maybe about a month, loading citrus boxes. And what I was thinking the whole time I was doing that was, I have got to graduate from college. These are the field boxes. This is what would be loaded out in the groves themselves, and then they would come into the plant where the citrus would be sorted out. And a large number of the oranges or lemons or whatever that are picked are not good enough to be put in as whole items. So they would be sent to this thing's called the juice bin, and it would be filled up with oranges or whatever that were going to be used for juicing. And ironically, a large number of them were sent in on the railroad to California to become California orange juice. Little did they know. This plant in Mesa doesn't have that sign on it anymore. I don't think the Sunkist plant, but that's very distinctive. They spent money on making that architecture. This is another plant that used to be in not in Tempe, but south of Tempe, the spreckled sugar beet plant. Now, all of these little plants down here, they look like orange trees. Those are all sugar beet plants, all the way around. And you would ask, well, how did they power that plant? I don't see that many wires. They powered that plant with coal. They brought in hopper load after hopper load of coal, and they burned that coal to make the plant self-sustaining. And then they brought in the sugar beets, and they made sugar. And that plant supplied, its number one customer was the soft drink companies. Now, when the soft drink companies went to using corn syrup, the sugar beets were no longer needed. This is a shopping center now down in South Gilbert. Remember these guys? This big pump here looks just like it's standing right there, but what you don't know is there's a shaft that goes straight down from that motor anywhere from 50 to 150 feet. That's a well, and straight down is where the water comes out. And it pumps up enough to fill that pipe, and it goes into the irrigation system. And that does use electricity. You can see those wires and things there. Tempe used to have these on every street corner. I remember the one at the corner of Rural and Broadway on the southwest corner, and it was there until they put the gas station there. Now it's gone too. This is a big secret, and I will use the hammer myself. Now that guy's using what is called a spike maul, and as you can see in the picture, he is hammering the spike on the other side of the rail. And the reason why is because if you tried to hammer on this side of the rail, you have to squat. So by staying up like this, you can reach down and hit the hammer at a little bit of an angle. For the benefit of those that needed the microphone, what I did was show swinging the hammer down over on the other side of the rail. And that's why it has this big, long head. If all they were doing was just hammering something, they could use a sledgehammer head. But this is for spiking rails, so it has a big head on it. Ironically, maul is the French word for hammer. And you all know what a mallet is. Well, a mallet is just a little hammer. And that is a picture of the mail crane being snagged. These slides are a little bit out of order, but you can see the guy inside's got that crane lifted up. When he grabs that bag, then he releases the mechanism for this crane, and it drops all by itself. Now I have here something that's really rare, and I'm going to let it go out there, and I'll show you. It's just a little brass ring. It has nothing to do with the merry-go-round. What do you think that's for? Come on, somebody can guess. Dan, you know? I even told you. There's no ring in the bottom of the bag. Nope, it's only in the top. That ring right there in the top of the bag. And because the bags took all the beating of sliding on the ground every time they got kicked out, and they're being grabbed by the hook, they had to replace the bags from time to time, but the rings they didn't want to replace, so they made it. If you'll notice, looking at that thing, there's a little screw on one end. They would take the screw out, open it up, and insert it on the new bag. And that's pretty much it. I have some other stuff up here I can show you, so that's the end of the slides. I am dressed in the railroader's uniform of the early 1900s. And going to work, he would need a nice clean rag that he would stick in his pocket. And he'd also have gloves. And he'd have his lunch box. And Grandpa also had a ticket punch when he had somebody on a mixed freight that wanted to have a ride. You always had to have your rule book. And you had a employee's timetable, which had all kinds of great information, and a lantern. And this is a brakeman's lantern. And then here we have some rail, a couple of pieces that are interesting. I'll tell you about the easy ones first, and I'll tell you about the hard one. Santa Fe line used a rail that was manufactured by Krupp. You can see the roll mark on here, Krupp. And I believe the year is 1881. That shows you when that was made. And that company is still in business, in fact. Many of the elevators in use for the city of Tempe are made by Krupp. Many of the escalators at the Phoenix airport are made by Krupp. So they've been around. The rail that goes through mainline Tempe now is this size. That's a cross section. That's a 140-pound rail. Now, 140 pounds refers to how much the rail weighs in a 3-foot section. So 3 feet of this is 140 pounds. And this is the rail that used to be up in the on the Santa Fe, that little line that curled around on that curved line on the north bank of the Salt. This is a 40-pound rail, a lot smaller. And then this is my treasure. I had a good friend who took a metal detector up to Promontory Summit where the gold spike was driven. And of course everybody kept all the gold spikes, but he had an idea that maybe there might be something else that they left behind. He found a section of rail about 2 feet long, and he said, "Hey, you want a piece of this?" I said, "Oh yeah." This is a piece of pear rail from the 1860s used at Promontory Summit. So the gold spike might have been driven into this. Any questions? Yes, ma'am. Goodbye.
You're going to have to stand here.
I'm standing here.
And I'll take this one. No, you got that one.
All right. Who had the question? I did. Sure, make me walk. Yeah, fine.
Okay. Why is there no passenger service out of Phoenix?
Because the line doesn't go anywhere. You can get down to Maricopa on a bus and connect to the railroad down there. But from Tempe Depot, there was for a while a train that went to the LA area or to El Paso and further points east and west. But since the line no longer goes to the west anymore, they figure they can't just take people halfway.
Why did they stop?
Well, they took the line out. The line was they couldn't afford to maintain that rail line on the west side. They had to spend money every year fixing bridges, fixing the ballast, the tie, replacing ties, replacing rail, replacing spikes. All that's a continuous process. And they wasn't making enough money in any way, in freight or mail going to that side, so they discontinued use of it. They still own that right-of-way, and there's talk of reopening it, but who knows when.
Lon?
David, you have a remarkable collection of photos and maps. Where did you get these from?
I got the photos from right over there, the Tempe History Museum. Join the Tempe History Society.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. See, all of you other people?
And these other things have been accumulated over the years. This was issued to me. As part of being part of the government.
All right. What is this way in the back? My goodness. All right, here we go. Question.
There has been talk now and then about a rail line to Tucson. Why is that so impossible? There's tracks going down the I-10.
Well, the rail line to Tucson is in place. It exists, but once again, it costs more to run a passenger train than the income that is derived from hauling the passengers. Now, if you wanted to spend, a lot of money on a passenger ticket and it would survive, then you could get that service. But it's right now just not a good business practice. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have one comment and one question, and the comment is, the track was pulled usually fairly soon when a line didn't want to go somewhere, because as long as the track was down, they paid tax. If they pulled the track, they still owned the land, but they didn't pay tax. So that was a motivation to get track pulled.
Correct.
My other question is, you didn't talk about narrow gauge and standard gauge at all. How did that affect the trains? Were they all narrow gauge in the beginning?
No, not really. Narrow gauge had an advantage in mountainous areas because they could make curves and have less excavation required. On flat land, there was really no advantage to narrow gauge, although some places used it anyway because the equipment was smaller and cheaper. But as equipment and loads got heavier and heavier, you couldn't put big things on little narrow gauge cars. So there was that.
About 5 years ago, there was a plan to have some sort of a large switching station right by Picacho Pass. I was just wondering if you have an update on what happened to that idea?
No, sir, I don't.
Coming your way.
Oh, boy.
So the reason it got voted down, and that's actually hampered business within Arizona. So there's a lot of demand for more rail traffic in Casa Grande, and that's why they needed to put the yard in. But it was voted down, so they've actually hampered business in Arizona by that decision. The
There you go.
second question, if you go back to your picture with the hoop, the orders hoop.
Okay, let's see if I can find it. I'm not that good with there you go, okay.
So the other hoop that's in the gentleman's left hand, who is that for?
The conductor. Conductor's back near the back someplace. By the way, the Southern Pacific only used these handheld hoops as a backup. They had a stand, they had a stand that was permanently placed that you could put just the Y section. Just apart from my hand off to the right, on my right, your left, and they didn't have this long stick. This stick was only used when they were away from that stand.
Any other, did he answer everything? Wow. It's something that you might want to mention because it's confusing for many people, the number of depots that were in Tempe over the years, and even where the first one was.
Well, the first one was built because that was how much money they had, and they used cheap materials, and it was a small location, and they found out as time went on that they needed more space, and they used better materials.
And how many depots were there overall?
Dan? 3 is what I have heard.
Actually, let's see, the first one was at 5th and Ash for a short time, and then it went down to where the current depot is, but there was another one there in the beginning, right? And then also where the light rail stops on 3rd Street, there was a depot, and then there was a depot or two east of Mill Avenue on that track that ran by the Butte.
So that makes 5.
Yeah, something like that. And
Okay.
then one of the ones that ran by the butte was moved over to, after a fire, to the current location. Is that close, or does it sound authoritative enough?
That sounds pretty good. You got a question back there.
Oh, okay, hold on. Running.
All these little stations we saw on the maps, like Peterson and Helena, and all those other little ones, were they genuine stations? Were there depots there, buildings, or were they just sort of
Good question.
stops?
Good question. The difference on a railroad between station and depot is very significant. A depot was something that passengers would be concerned with. A station was only used by the railroaders, and a station might just be a sign on a post that says Helena. That might be the only thing there. And the reason why was because maybe that telegraph had clicked out and told the railroader, and he got a flimsy that says, you're going to meet somebody at Helena. So he would get to Helena and stop and wait until that somebody came there. And I mean somebody, another train, keeping the trains from hitting each other.
Other questions? Well, oh, yes, sir. Oh, gee whiz, can't we just line everybody up? Oh, yeah, I'm doing pretty well here.
In the early days, my grandparents told me that they used to stop the train on the Southern Pacific Line. Go out there and the train would stop and pick them up and take them on. Is that true?
That would be, it's what's called flag stopping, and it would depend on the policy of the railroad at the time. And if they were trying to foster goodwill and encourage people, then that's the kind of thing they would do. That's still done in Alaska, on the Alaskan Railroad.
Quick comment on that. Several years ago, I rode Amtrak in from LA to Phoenix. I was booked to Phoenix, but as I came into Phoenix, I talked to the conductor and asked him if he could do a flag stop at Tempe Depot, and he did. So I got off at Tempe Depot.
When was that? How long ago?
90s.
90s, okay.
What is that, Bill? Speak up.
I just said, I thought he was going to say 1890s.
Oh.
Was this not a great presentation? All right, who's distributing the tests? We've got the test to see how much you can remember of all of this. Well, we don't let just, you can't just talk and then expect everybody to remember that. So.
What about me? I don't remember.
Well, that's.
I didn't even get to show you my grandpa's watch. This is a Hamilton Railway Special 992B, in case you are a watch aficionado. It's chained to me, I can't. And oh, by one other thing. This flyer that was sent out for the lunch talks has my picture in it, and it is a picture of my airline time, and that is an engine that I'm standing in, not in front of, in the engine. And I wish I had a picture of that. That is a Trent, a Rolls-Royce Trent. That's the name of that engine. And it has 77,000 pounds of thrust, which is something like 47,000 horsepower. Boy, wouldn't a dragster love to have 47,000 horsepower?
All right, that makes an interesting question then. What was the horsepower of an average train engine?
Enough.
Everybody loves a smart guy. I was going to thank you, but now I'm not. And you know that I just want to say to you that this is probably the oldest child you will ever meet, because look at that. 4,400 square feet of model railroading. And how often do you visit the basement or the addition?
Every day.
Huh.
Oh, I knew I didn't like you from the very beginning. David, thank you very much. This was absolutely incredible. It's one that a lot of people were waiting for. So as a memorable token, we have this for you. And I thought that this would be appropriate. The Richard Nearing, whom you probably should know, was an incredible pen and ink artist and documented Tempe in just remarkable ways. He was another one I didn't like. I wanted to break his fingers because I can't draw a straight line. But this is the Tempe Depot. So that is for you.
Thank you. And I have to tell you, if you can get one of these, they're worthwhile. And there's a picture, or in the picture right here on the end, there's a little sign that says Tempe on it. I made that. There was a American Freedom train, the steam engine that was coming through in the 70s or 80s, I forget which. When was it? 76. Okay, right, that would make sense. And the signs were gone. So I figured, oh shoot, I need to put something up there. So I went and got a 2x8 and cut it up and painted it white and cut the corners off of it and painted Tempe on it. And when I put it up, I said, it's too small. I needed to use something like a 2x14, and they don't make those anymore. So I wonder where they are now. They're gone.
There was one on the other side. And the museum now has that. And we were talking earlier, one of the original ones that was on the north side is molded glass. In other words, it comes out in profile and fits into a metal frame. But one of the letters is missing, but we were just discussing some strategies to recreate that one letter. I don't think it may have been on display at one time, but it is in the collection of the museum. I don't know where yours went. That would be interesting to do some research on. So when we're all done for the folks here, to those watching on Facebook, because you can't come up here and look at this stuff, you're welcome to take a look at this really incredible collection of railroad memorabilia. I'm a little disappointed that you didn't bring your 4,400 square feet train set down just so everybody could enjoy it. I don't think this room is 4,400 square, is it? This room is, all right, put that into perspective. This room is smaller than where his train collection is displayed. Does that give you some idea? I mean, I don't know any children older than you. Every kid's dream would be to have something like that.
He's got a whole collection of children older than him who helped him
build it
and run it.
Yeah.
There's 4 of them right there.
Oh.
5. And there's one in the back. Randy's not paying attention.
So,
and one over there.
Oh, well, that explains something. Are you all, I guess you're all train geeks then. But anybody fly an airplane except him? No, see, that's, how do you go from, well, you went from trains first to airplanes. And that's a cool cap. I want that. We'll talk about that. And I thought who did you fly for?
Western.
Western, but.
And then Delta.
Oh, you did fly for Delta, because that's a Delta cap, so. All right, thank you again. When we're all through, feel free to come up. Next month, we have no lunch talks, because that's December, and everybody is pretty well occupied with the holidays. So our next presentation will be January 11th, the second Wednesday at 11:30. Dr. Octavania Valenzuela Trujillo will be here, and she'll be talking about her Yaqui identity, her family, the cemetery, which not a lot of people know about. which really, it's in Tempe, it's not in Guadalupe, and her time living in Guadalupe. And that kind of follows on a new exhibition that will be opening Saturday, November 19th. Is that next Saturday? It's called Guadalupe, Where Three Cultures Flourish. So if you can get a chance to come out and see that before January, that would be great. It will run until April of next year. And a few other things that are happening December 2nd in continuation of a theme of Latin music performances at the museum. The Driftwood Quintet will be here on December 2nd. And I think that pretty well covers everything that I've got. If you really enjoyed today's talk, fortunately it will be archived on our Facebook page and the Society and the museum and everywhere. We've been able to do that ever since the pandemic, thanks to all the cameras that are here. So tell some friends, because this is one of the most remarkable histories that you'll get at these presentations. So with that, thank you again. Best wishes for a wonderful Thanksgiving, a Hanukkah, a Christmas, and any other holiday that you might celebrate, and a new year. And hopefully 2023 will be a little bit of an improvement over 2022, but they told me not to talk politics, so I'm not going to do that. We will... Oh, yes, the Peterson House Open House. That will be just... The first 3 weekends in December. Pardon? 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. At the Peterson House. If you haven't been there, it's absolutely a terrific place. And Dave already talked about, I didn't know that there had been a Peterson stop there. So again, we're all learning something new. And so the first 3 weekends, also there is, call it a fair there? What are we calling it? Okay, a Christmas market at the Peterson House. So you get to tour the house. All of this is free. So all you got to do is show up. And we started that last year, and it really was quite a successful series of events for the first 3 weekends. So with that, thank you all for coming out. We will see you after the first of the year. For the folks who aren't members, you will not be able to leave until you show your membership card to the security man out there who weighs 400 pounds, but don't let that intimidate you. Have a great holiday. Thank you.